Okay, let's say you have this to be your graph, and after selecting or maybe picking your scale for the y coordinate and then the scale for the x coordinate or the x-axis, or which is also the same as the horizontal line, and the y coordinate is also the vertical line. And let's say this straight line is the graph that you've drawn, or maybe from the table, the values that you've plotted on the graph. And then you are asked to calculate for the slope. The slope is the same as the gradient, but we use gradient in commas, mostly in commas. But in interscience, it is the slope. And how to calculate for the slope is the same as how to calculate for the gradient, because they are the same thing. Slope and the gradient. Gradient, which is normally represented with m, is the same as what? A slope, which is represented with x. Alright, so what we do is the points that you've plotted, you can use it, but for you to be sure, we avoid using the point. So we intend pick a point on the line which is easier to plot, like easier to see. So we are assuming, like I'm assuming that this is the point I want to pick, or I want to select. So point 1. Then what happened is that I will trace this point to the y, to the x line or the horizontal line. Any value that it will fall on, that particular value will be my x1. So with this one, it is falling on 4. So this 4 here is my x1. So x1 is equal to 4. Then the same point, I will trace it to the y coordinate or the vertical line. So with this one, approximately, I think it should be 2.8. Let's assume it to be 2.8. So this 2.8 will be my y1, which is equal to 2.8. 2.8. Because it's not falling on the 3, but it's closer to the 3. So let's assume it to be 2.3. Now this point here is what we are plotting on the x and the y coordinate. So after selecting this point to be your point 1, we are going to select another point again. Okay. That point will be your second. So let's assume this is the second point you have chosen. Okay. We are going to do the same thing, tracing it to the x coordinate, then recording that value to be your x2. X2. So you assume this x2 to also be, I think, 6.8. 6.8. All these values, the selection is easy. Like the picking, you see it clearly the moment you trace it. Normally we use ruler, but this one I'm just doing a rough work, so you manage it like that. Yeah, we normally use ruler so that you get a value easier, and so you just put your ruler on it straight like that. Put it straight on it like that. Then you trace it with short dashes up to the x coordinate. Then we do the same thing to trace the same point to the y coordinate. So this y will give me y2, this particular value will give me y2, and then you say that one is also, let's say, 5.6. So this is y2. Now you have y1, y2, you have x1, x2. This point that you have chosen, you normally join it to form a triangle. You don't use short dashes for this one, so it's just a ruler. It's the work of the ruler. Then we join it to form a triangle. You see that we form a very nice triangle here, something like this. Now this side of the triangle, which is vertical to the y coordinate, we call it change in y. Then the side which is also horizontal, or which is parallel to the x coordinate, or the horizontal line, we call it change in x. Now you go back to where you are answering your question, then you see the slope s is equal to change in y over change in x. Never do it change in x over change in y. It is normal, always change in y over change in x. The vertical over the horizontal. That's what happens. Now when we say a change in mathematics means subtraction. So change in y is equal to, these are the values of y. That is what you have gotten from the points that you've chosen. So the first value, which is y1 minus y2. You see, for changing y, I did it y1 minus y2. y1 is what? 2.8 minus y2 is what? 5.6. Then with the help of the calculator, you get a value. You get a value. This one, I am sure it should be let's say, okay, so 16.8. This is remaining 4, so 2.8. It will be negative because the first value is smaller than the second value, so it will be a negative value. But don't worry about the negative because it will cancel out. So for changing y, we have minus 2.8. all right, over, now changing x is also the same thing. But look, when we're doing changing y, the first value was y1 before y2. The moment you do it y1 minus y2, then changing x will also be what? x1 minus x2. Assuming you did it y2 minus y1, then this change in x will also be what? x2 minus x1. But with this one, because we started with what? y1 minus y2, change in y will also, a change in x will also be what? x1 minus x2, which is also going to give you a negative value because the x1 is smaller than what? x2. Let's see, what is our x1? x1 is what? 4 from the point that we have selected. x1 is 4, so x1 4 minus, now x2 is what? 6.8, which is 6.8. Are you getting me? So now After subtraction, I think this one will also give me 2.8, which is also negative because this is smaller than that. Are you okay? So now our x2, the change in x is also minus 2.8. So when you divide, the numerator is the same as the denominator. The numerator is the same as the denominator. So when you subtract, when you do this negative, you cancel the negative. And I'm sure since this is the same as this, everything cancels out to give you 1. So your slope, which is x, is equal to 1. That is all. That is all what we are looking for. So normally the values are selected from your line. Then you use it to form a triangle. Then you indicate your change in y, you indicate your change in x. Now you come to your slope. You say the slope is equal to change in y over change in x. Now you do your calculation for change in y. Change in y, we have y1, we have y2. They are values that we have gotten from the points that we have selected. So y1, we had 2.8. That is what I brought here. Then y2, we had 5.6. That is 5.6. When you do your subtraction, you get 2.8. So now your change in y is 2.8. But because the change in y1 is smaller than y2, you will get a negative value. So that is what I brought. That is why I brought the negative there. All right. Now you are done with what? Change in y, which is the numerator. Now you come to your change in x. Change in x is also done the same way. Because we started with y1 before y2, change in x is also going to start with what? x1 before x2. And then the value for x1, you got it from the graph. That is x1. X1 we had 4. Now x2 is what? 6.8. That is it. x1 4, x2 6.8. You do your subtraction. Because x1 is smaller than x2, you are going to get a negative value, and that is what? 2.8. So the numerator becomes the same as what? The denominator. Cancels out to give you 1. Don't forget, this is negative. This is also negative. So it cancels out to give you a positive number, which is 1. So therefore, the slope of this particular graph that we've drawn here is what? 1. That's all.